Touchdown, Pittsburgh!
Touchdown, Washington!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Steelskin Show, episode 54. The Steelskin Show, a show hosted by one diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan and one diehard Washington Redskins fan, from game recaps, game previews, news headlines, analysis, opinions, and all kinds of other stuff. We have got you covered on all things Pittsburgh Steelers and Washington Redskins. My name is Patrick. I am the voice of the Pittsburgh Steelers here on Lay Show.
And I'm Chris, voice of the Washington Redskins.
Chris, what's good, bro?
You.
Me?
You.
Thanks. I feel loved. Continuing on with our 2017 pre-training camp roster evaluations today. Chris, we completed the defense. So we are now moving to the offensive side of the football. And today on our roster evaluations, we are discussing quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers.
Yes, and Patrick, Pittsburgh seems to be, the pro version of wide receiver U.
Oh, yeah.
It just seems like they develop good wide receivers.
Yeah.
And I don't think this year is going to be any different.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The sad part is a lot of guys are going to go home because we literally have 9 guys who are up to get a spot. Now, let's be honest. There are obvious guys who are going to make the roster no matter what. But we do kind of have this conglomerate of guys who are fighting and scrapping to make, kind of get on this team in camp. So I'll just go ahead and say it right off the bat. I think the Steelers are going to keep a total of 6 wide receivers. I don't think there's any reason to assume they wouldn't keep 6. And I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So the first guy is Antonio Brown. I mean, yeah, there's really nothing to say about Antonio Brown. Best receiver in football, 100% locked to make this team, highest paid receiver in the league. Yeah, I mean, what are you going to say? Martavis Bryant is the next guy on our list. I don't think there's really much of a discussion here either. I think he's a lock to make the team as well. He's going to be your starting outside wide receiver, opposite side to Antonio Brown. Assuming he stays on the straight and narrow, of course. We're really excited that he's back on the team. He's a really special guy. And look, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this. I think Martavis Bryant, he has the skill set to be one of the top receivers in this league. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
I mean, I think he's got the skill set to be on the Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown level. I really, really believe that.
Well, I just think the guy's an athletic freak.
Yeah, he is. He just gives you a skill set that you don't see in a guy who is 6'4".
Yeah.
His elusiveness, his speed. I mean, he really is a special guy. And if he can stay on the field, if he can stay clean, stay focused, and keep his head in games mentally, that's another thing I'm a little bit worried about with him, is staying in games mentally.
Yeah.
But if he can do all those things look really good for him right now. He seems like he's on the straight and narrow. If he can continue to do that, I think he's going to be right back where he was a couple of years ago, and even better. He's put on a lot of muscle. Looks like he's even faster. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting year for him. Moving on to Eli Rogers is our next guy on the list. Rogers is a lock to make this team, I think. It was really awesome to see what Eli Rogers finally did last year, finally got on the field after having a really disappointing first year where he was turning, really every single head in camp, but then he had that bad injury and he missed the first year. Gets on the field in year 2, and I thought he was really everything we asked him to be. Just a really good, solid slot receiver. And I think he kind of became a nice little safety blanket for Ben Roethlisberger, a guy who ran nice crossing routes, really was a nice vertical threat in the middle of the field.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be an exciting year for him as well. But here's what I will say about Rodgers. I don't think he's at risk of losing a spot on this team. What I do think he is at risk of losing is snaps. And that's where we cue our rookie, number 4, Juju Smith-Schuster, the Steelers' second-round draft pick out of the University of Southern California. Juju is a really interesting pick because at first glance, when you look at the roster, it's kind of hard to decide where you plug this guy in immediately. You and I obviously talked about him on the show, Chris, when we did our draft recap show. One of the things we talked about was him being Martavis Bryant insurance. Obviously, if Bryant stays on the field and he stays on the straight and narrow, nobody's really going to take snaps from him. But you got Schuster just kind of as a, we're gonna watch you like a hawk, Martavis. And if you screw up, we do have this rookie who we like a lot. But another reason why the Smith-Schuster pick made a lot of sense was because we lost Marcus Wheaton. obviously. And then when you look at our depth, we are sort of lackluster at depth just a little bit. So the Smith-Schuster pick made a lot of sense. So picking him made sense, but the question is, where do you plug him in right away? And that's really the big discussion here. I think the first landing spot for Smith-Schuster is going to be the slot. And that's where we talk about he and Eli Rogers, switching snaps in and out. And look, this is not a knock on Eli Rogers at all. I want to be very clear about this. But Smith-Schuster, Chris, does give you a little more bang for your buck than Rogers. He's 6'1". He weighs a little bit more. He's bigger bodied, bigger framed. Not to mention, even though I don't think he's going to get a lot of snaps on the outside, he can play on the outside if you need him to. Rogers is not playing on the outside.
Right, and Schuster, he played outside at
USC. Yes, he did. So
what I kind of envision, and AB is the kind of guy that you can motion him.
Oh, you can play him anywhere
into
on the
slot. If you wanted to have Schuster in there,
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
You still wouldn't take snaps away from either Martavis or Bryant.
Yes,
but you could keep him on the outside and motion AB. Inside one of those guys.
And that's very interesting. And I think the Steelers, because of how much depth they have at receiver this year, you're going to see a lot more variations. And I think you're going to see a lot of 5 wide receiver sets this season, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think the big battle here is going to be between Rogers and Schuster. I think they're both making the team. I think they're both locks. Just what's the snap count going to be? We'll see. Next guy on the list is my boy, Sammy Coates.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Wow is right. Sammy, what are we going to do with you, man? Here's the thing about Sammy Coates. His chances of making this team are probably over 50%. And in fact, I think the Steelers probably want him back in a couple of ways. But one thing we do need to be clear about, this guy is not a lock to make this team yet. Sammy really is a truly polarizing player because, Chris, last season, at the beginning of the season, he really was pretty incredible. He led the NFL in reception yards there for a time because he was averaging at least 1 or 2 catches per game over 40 yards or more. So he kind of was our version of Martavis Bryant there towards the beginning of the season. But then, of course, he has the broken finger thing happen to him, and he just wasn't the same after that. Could not catch a wide open pass, wouldn't fight for footballs. Now, here's where I'm going to throw a little bit of water on that. I am not fully convinced, Chris, that because he barely saw snaps at wide receiver after that happened. Here's my theory. I do not totally think it was because of the finger. Chris, as soon as his finger got well, Tomlin exclusively almost threw him on special teams. Now, let me ask you. Coates was very quick to say it's my fingers. I'm just having a lot of psychological problems with my fingers. Let me ask you a question, Chris. When you're playing special teams, do you use your fingers?
Well, you use your hands to tackle.
Yes. You're running down the field at full speed. You're putting your hands on guys, and you're blocking them and tackling them. Chris, I don't think it was totally because he was getting his mind right. And here was another pretty interesting report that came out about Sammy Coates. Apparently, he had a brush-up with Mike Tomlin on the sideline one of these games. And here's the thing about Mike Tomlin. He's kind of made his money being a laissez-faire, sort of let the boys be the boys kind of a head coach. But he has kind of also made himself known as, you better not speak back to me.
Right.
You better not talk back to me.
If I'm going to give you a lot of rope,
you better respect me.
Yeah. You better not make it weird.
The word on the street was that Coates kind of said something to Tomlin, and Tomlin was like, okay, boy, you can go sit on the bench for a while.
Yeah.
But here's all I know about Sammy Coates. He proved that he's athletic. He proved that he's fast. He proved that he can be a big down-the-field threat. He proved that he can take the top off of defenses. But I'll tell you what else he proved, too. He proved that he has catching problems. He proved that he can literally only run one route. That is a go route. Don't ask him to run any other route other than that. And he also proved that he doesn't really fight for catches. And that's something that grinds my gears about wide receivers. Dude, you're not going to get a wide open football every now and then. Every now and then you're going to have to fight a little bit for a football. So Sammy, he's not a lock to make the team, guys. I know a lot of people, you look at the preliminary 53-man rosters, he's already made it. No. He showed the Steelers enough last season for them to say, okay, we need some competition in camp. That's all I'm trying to say. Moving on to the next guy, Darius Hayward-Bay. Going into his 4th year with the team, Hayward-Bay's chances are pretty good, I think, but I also don't think he's a lock. He is going to have some competition this year in camp. when you look at him, he's a guy who is 30 years old, which is an age that tends to scare most teams, especially when you're playing that wide receiver position. Now, look, he is under contract until 2019, but he's only due to make $1,200,000. So if you wanted to cut ties with him,
it's not going to kill you.
It's not going to kill you. Now, on the flip side, it's also not going to kill you to keep him either. He's not going to be a big cap casualty anyway. And then there's other reasons that you might not want to get rid of Darius Hayward-Bay. You know, this guy kind of has been a nice little Swiss Army knife for us over the past couple of years. You know, he hasn't gotten an enormous amount of snaps at wide receiver. I mean, I think in his 3 years at Pittsburgh, he's had 30 catches, 461 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So he hasn't gotten a lot of time at wide receiver, but there have been times where we've had some injuries, had some mishaps, and we've called on this guy, and he's answered the bell. He has proved that he can play the position. He can be a big downfield threat. And he can be a big downfield threat. And look, he still is a guy who has 4.3 speed.
Yeah.
He still is one of the fastest men in football.
Yeah.
And also, one of the biggest things about this guy is he is a special teams thumper. He is fantastic at special teams. So he does give you that. I do think he is going to have a little bit of competition in camp, but I think his chances are good. I'd say his chances to make the team are probably somewhere over 50%. Next guy on the list is Justin Hunter. He was one of our free agency signings this offseason. Hunter is not a lock to make this team. That's something we should probably go ahead and start off with. He's really going to be fighting for a job in training camp. And it's kind of the thing about Hunter that's kind of funny is, you know, when we initially signed him back in March, you know, he was Martavis Bryant insurance.
Right.
6'4", runs a 4.2, only 26 years old. And at that point, I think Hunter's stock was probably pretty solid. Then Martavis Bryant gets reinstated, and I think his stock just went way like this.
Yeah.
Now, he is going to get in camp. I think he could threaten a guy like Sammy Coates or Darius Hayward-Bay. I think he could. But, man, after Martavis Bryant got signed back, this guy's stock really just got really uncertain. But we'll see what he can do in camp, but he is not a lock to make the team. That's something we should probably go ahead and say. Next guy is Kobe Hamilton. Hamilton, bless his heart, Hamilton is not a lock to make this team, and frankly, he's going to have a massive camp and a massive preseason, I think, to secure a spot on the final 53, and a lot of that just has to do with the guys that are in front of him. Now, I want to be clear about Kobe Hamilton. I like this guy a lot. When you look at his journey last season, from getting signed late in the preseason to having an amazing, explosive preseason to eventually getting activated off the practice squad,
Right.
Because of all the mishaps we had at wide receiver. He did not catch a ton of footballs, but let me tell you something, man. This dude caught some tough physical catches. I mean, he really caught some contested catches, and there were several times last season where I was like, hey, Sammy Coates, you watch how this guy plays?
Right.
He actually fights for footballs. But then so I think that speaks well for him, but then when you look at the physical limitations, he's not overly fast, he's not overly athletic, he's not really a prolific route runner either. So I like Kobe a lot. He's humble, he's quiet, he works hard. He's the type of high-character guy you want on a football team, but I just think because of the physical limitations and the guys in front of him, it's going to be difficult. Even though he made the team last year, I still think he's got some tough competition. And last but not least, we have DeMarcus Ayers. I'll just go ahead and say it. I'm totally 100% biased. I want this guy to make the team. Ayers obviously was our 6th-round draft pick in last year's draft out of the University of Houston. Much like Hamilton, he was a guy who got activated off the practice squad last season because of all the mishaps we had. Now, he was activated a lot later than Kobe Hamilton. He was actually activated for that Christmas Day game against the Ravens, then played the following week against the Browns and had a massive game. Here's what I'll say about Ayers. His chances are extremely low to make this team, and that makes me sad. Because I think we've got a hidden gem on our football team, and we don't even know it. I think this guy, one of the things that I said about Ayers when we drafted him out of Houston, his big claim to fame was punt returner, kick returner. But when you watch the guy's wide receiver tape, dude, he's great. He's absolutely amazing. So I want him to have a massive camp and make this roster. I really hope it happens. It's probably on the lower end of the poll, but I like this guy a lot. I think he's a gem, and I think if we'll work with him, give him a chance, I think he can really turn a lot of heads. So that pretty much does it for the wide receivers. Moving on to the running back position now. Le'Veon Bell, what more are you going to say about this guy? We've covered his contract situation. Uncertain for 2018, but we know he's a Steeler this year. And as long as he is on this team, he's going to be the bell cow. He's going to be 25, 30 carries a game, get him in the receiving game. Now, Martavis Bryant's going to cut back on that a little bit. But as long as he's here, he is the workhorse. Number 2, James Conner. One thing we need to go ahead and get right off the bat about James Conner, we're all psyched that he got drafted by the Steelers. Very excited. I'm glad to have him here. But, guys, he is not – if you think that it's going to be this thing where he and Bell split snaps like 50-50, dude, you're wrong. No. You are wrong. Is Conner going to get snaps at running back? Yes. He's probably going to be a 10 carries a game type of guy, most likely.
Yeah, I mean – don't you think kind of a short yardage hammer?
Short, yeah, a bit critical third down situation. Steelers are up 35-0 in the fourth quarter. There's a great time you put him in. Yeah. Take Bell out, preserve him a little bit. But there's a lot of people who just think that Connor's going to come in and just take the job this season. And, guys, that's not going to happen. 10 carries a game, a lot of special team snaps. That's where Connor's going to be this season. Now, maybe next year, because of the uncertainty with Le'Veon Bell, maybe James Conner does get a big opportunity next season. But, we'll cross that hill when we get there. Next guy on the list is Niall Davis, one of our free agency signings this offseason. Of course, we all remember Niall from the Kansas City Chiefs. He was kind of their special team stud back in the day. Here's the thing about Davis. He is not a lock to make this team, but I think his chances are good. The guy he's going to be fighting with is number 4 on the list, Fitzgerald Toussaint. I think Davis probably has a leg up on Toussaint for a number of reasons, because of the veteran status and because of the special teams reputation this guy has. At one point, man, he was amazing at Kansas City at returning kicks. Now, Fitz Toussaint, here's the thing about Niall Davis. He does have an injury history. So that's something that could, maybe that flares in camp and then Toussaint gets the call again. But he and Toussaint are going to battle it out in camp, but I think Davis kind of has the leg up. And I will go ahead and say, we're going to keep 3 running backs. There's some people who seem to think we could keep all 4 of them. No, that's just not going to happen. And then, of course, I didn't roll this guy into our running backs, but we do have a fullback on our team, Roosevelt Nix, 100% locked to make the team. Believe it or not, the Steelers are one of those weird teams who still keep a fullback. But, hey, you can't complain. The guy, some of the biggest runs Le'Veon Bell has ever had is because of Rosie Nix blocking. Not to mention this guy's an amazing contributor on special teams. So, excited about him. Moving on to the quarterback situation. Now, Big Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, we're keeping 3. Big Ben, nothing really to say here. The number 2 spot, I'm going to go ahead and crush a lot of your dreams. Landry Jones is going to be your number 2. Now, I guess I can't set that in stone. Maybe Josh Dobbs comes out in training camp and preseason and does amazing, and then maybe they can battle it out for that number 2 spot.
Right.
But, guys, the Steelers tend to be a system type of team. Landry Jones has been in this system for a long time. Even though it took forever, his development did eventually pay off. When he did get a chance to get on the field last season twice, I think he made the most of it. I think he's progressed well. So I'm just preparing you. For all of you Josh Dobbs lovers out there, I'm excited about him too, but he's going to most likely be the 3rd string guy. It's going to be Landry Jones, then Josh Dobbs. And I think that really about covers it for me.
Okay.
All right. Chris, let's kick it over to you. Let's start with your wide receivers. So I'm curious to see what you have to say here, because obviously you guys lost, massive weapons at wide receiver. You lose Deshaun Jackson. You lose, who was it, Pierre Garçon? Was it Pierre Garçon?
Yeah, we lost Garçon. We lost Jackson.
Yeah. And, now, of course, you have, you still got all reliable Jamison Crowder on the team, and now you've added Terrell Pryor. We're going to see how this Josh Dotson guy is, this rookie last year out of, TCU? Yeah, so how do you feel about wide receiver? Are you uncertain? Do you feel good?
I feel really good.
Okay.
I do. I'm like you. I think the Redskins keep 6.
Okay.
We'll start with Terrell Pryor. Big thing that I've been impressed with from the time they've signed him all the way through, this guy just wants to get better. He wants to learn the nuances of the game.
Right.
He wants to learn the nuances of the position. I don't know whether you follow him on Twitter or not, but he's got a lot of good training videos. Training clips out there on his Instagram account and stuff, and I think he's done a lot of work this offseason with some really good guys. And I think he's a guy that has really invested in this position. He's not bitter that he got moved to wide receiver. He's embraced it. And
he's a stud.
Is all in. So it's going to take some time, obviously, to work out some a rapport with Kirk Cousins, but I'm really, really excited about him. Number 2 guy, Josh Dotson, by all accounts, looks very good this offseason.
Right.
He has a rare skill set. When this guy's healthy, his catch radius, got good speed, moves well after the catch. I really feel like we're solid on the outside with those two guys. Now, it's going to be different. Kirk Cousins grew up with Pierre Garçon from the time. He was signed in 2012 until last year. He and Pierre Garçon, had a good thing, and you don't replace that overnight. So there are going to be some patches where it takes a little bit for these guys to get on the same page, but I really feel like if you had told me, okay, you're going to lose Garçon and lose Jackson, but here's what you will have, I wouldn't have believed it. In the slot, Jamison Crowder.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think this guy's poised for a monster year.
I think Crowder's a lot better than people think.
I think he's one of the reasons I've really still feel confident about this offense is. Yes, we're going to miss Deshaun Jackson. There's not a better deep threat in the game than he is, but I still think Jamison Crowder stretches the position, stretches the slot, stretches the middle of the field. Number one, with his hands and his speed. He can turn bubble screens, slip screens. He can stretch the field horizontally, but this guy can also get downfield. And he can work over a slot receiver. So I really feel like, and they're talking about, shifting him outside some. I think he's poised for a big year. I really, really do.
Well, he's going to get a lot more opportunities now with the loss of Jackson.
I think so, and he's such an easy guy to feature,
right?
Because he's such a good route runner. He's got great hands that you really trust him on just about every route. And I think again, you're going to have to compensate for losing the two guys that Kirk worked with for a bunch of his career. But at the same time, he's worked with Jamison Crowder very well the last 2 years, and that's a nice buffer to have. Yeah. That is a great guy to have in there to ease that transition, and he's a playmaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel really good about our top three. The next three, Redskin fans, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. When the zombie apocalypse comes, Reed Doughty is going to survive, our safety that we couldn't seem to get rid of, and Ryan Grant will also survive. I can't find one single Redskin fan that wants Ryan Grant to make the team, but the coaches love the guy, so we just going to have to swallow it. He's going to make the team. The thing that Ryan Grant brings is versatility. He can play both outside positions, and he can play inside. And we don't really have depth behind Jamison Crowder. So, Lord willing, nothing will happen to him.
Please.
But, Ryan Grant's a guy, every year the coaches say the same thing. He's a hard worker, runs great routes, best route runner on the team. But when it comes to game time, he just seems invisible.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But I think he's going to make the team as number 4. Our fifth guy will be Maurice Harris, and he's a guy I really like. He played last year, worked his way from the practice squad. He was an undrafted free agent, and he really made the most. He's a guy that made the most of his opportunity last year.
Yeah.
So I think he makes it, and he's big. He's got solid speed. He's got really good feet, and I think if something happens, hopefully it won't. But I think he's a guy that got good exposure last year, and I think he can be productive if we had to have him.
Yeah.
The sixth position is really the only one that's kind of up for grabs, and it's really between Robert Davis, I think he was our 6th round pick.
Oh, out of Georgia State.
Like that, and Brian Quick, who was a free agent we signed from the Rams. And it really boils down to this: you're probably going to keep 5 guys active. So somebody's going to be inactive, and it's a whole lot easier to have a rookie be that inactive guy than it is a guy like Brian Quick,
who's a veteran.
And it really boils down to this: do you keep the veteran for depth, because Brian Quick does represent really the only veteran with substantial playing time in his career? Or do you choose to develop your guy like Robert Davis?
Right, yeah.
I raised my hand for Robert Davis.
Me too. You remember on my draft, it was our pre-draft show, I talked about this
and
guy.
I really don't see him. I don't see the Redskins being able to get him to the practice squad. I think you really run a risk of him getting picked up by somebody if in that little window when you cut him and try to get him back on the practice squad. So I'd rather see Robert Davis than Brian Quick. I don't have anything against Brian Quick. I know his hands are inconsistent. I just feel like there's a whole lot more to develop with Davis, and I think it would be a good thing to have him there in the number 6 slot.
Right.
So there's the receivers. Not a lot of mystery about what's going to go on there. The running backs, I think we're going to keep 3. I think it's obvious going to be Fat Rob,
Ryan.
Robert Kelly, Samaje Perine, and Chris Thompson. I'd love to see Mac Brown make it. I really would. I love Mac Brown. I'd love to see them get him to the practice squad another time just to see if we did lose a guy during the season, call him up because he knows the system. He's been productive in the few times he's had an opportunity. But I think they'll go with 3. I think Kelly definitely going to be the starter. I'm really interested to see Rob this year.
That's interesting. You think Kelly is going to
start?
Yeah.
Just listening to the coaches, especially Gruden, they like this guy. I like the guy.
Yeah.
He really came back. I think he lost some weight. He talked about getting in better shape. He's really embraced this role. He didn't. A lot of times a rookie like that gets in there and he has a taste of success, lets it go to his head, and then before you know it, you're showing up to camp overweight, out of shape.
Yeah.
He did just the opposite. He really embraced it, and I think he's trying to take the old adage, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. There is no staying the same. So I was really, really encouraged how he approached this offseason. Excited to see Samaje Perine. I do think he's going to have a big role to play this year.
I like this guy.
I'm really excited to see him run. And obviously Chris Thompson, he's another guy that I'm very excited about. I think last year we just saw a glimpse of how versatile this guy really is.
Yeah.
He's by far the best blocker in the backfield. But he's a guy that is a dual threat, and he can be a nightmare, especially now on early downs, with his ability to break big runs and catch, work out of the backfield and catches and screens. But anyway, so I think we'll go 3 there. And then in quarterback, we're going to keep 3.
Nate Sudfeld, Kirk Cousins at second string.
Kirk Cousins, Colt McCoy, and Nate Sudfeld. And for those of you who think maybe Kirk Cousins ends up sitting towards the end of the year and Nate Sudfeld putting his stamp on this team, it's not going to happen.
Let's go, Nate.
Not going to happen. I'm not going to make any kind of crazy bets if Nate Sudfeld starts a game this year, like sitting here and eating my hat. I don't like hat. I don't want to eat hat. So I'm not going to tell you that I would do that.
You just haven't had it the right way.
But I'm not going to make any crazy things, but I can tell you I do not see Nate Sudfeld starting a game this year. So you might want to hold off buying those jerseys. But anyway, that's really the rundown there. There's not a lot of mystery in those positions.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Chris, that about wrap it up for you?
Wraps it up for me.
I got nothing to say. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Remember to follow us on Twitter. We are at Steelskin Show. Follow us individually. I am at P_Garrison. He is at CGLSKSC. Like the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Steelskin Show. If you're listening on iTunes, we appreciate it. Be sure to rate the show. Please subscribe and write a review. And YouTube, you guys know how to use YouTube. If you don't, there's really no hope for you at this point. Subscribe, join the comments below, all that good stuff.
Yeah, hey, man, add us. We don't mind it.
Yeah. No, please, talk some crap. Let's go.
We don't mind it at all.
No. We embrace all creatures, different nationalities. What was that from? The Muppets? Muppets?
Yeah.
OG Muppets. All right, Chris, I don't want to talk anymore. How about you?
Me either.
Yep. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, good night.
Touchdown, Pittsburgh! Touchdown, Washington!